So it's so difficult to survive here.
Yeah. When my father actually was young and growing up here, he lived out on a lake that he couldn't get to town for 6 months of the year. He stayed out on the lake. And he didn't eat anything that he didn't kill.
Oh God.
Yeah. He went all winter without eating anything from the store. He would just go catch fish in the lake. They would get their water from the lake.
Yeah.
And that was back before they had, you know, the electric drills. They just had ice axes.
Oh,
So
by hand.
they would have to, by hand, cut holes in the lake with an axe.
But why do people don't want to move out or?
Because this is home. I mean, it's hard and it's cold and it's dark in the winter, but it's beautiful. I mean, like if you look around you, there's just nothing but woods and wilderness. And it's hard to find a place that's quite like this.
目前在阿拉斯加有大约4万名的爱斯基摩原住民，受到现代文明的影响，70%的人都搬到城镇，传统的雪屋早已不复见，只有极少数的爱斯基摩人还沿袭着祖先的生活方式，狩猎、游牧。唯有在零下几十度低温，驾着狗拉雪橇，奔驰在北极圈。或是坐在结冻冰湖上的此刻，身为现代人的我们，也才能真正体会这个北方民族对抗严酷环境的勇敢坚韧和求生存的坚强意志。欢迎回到《极地长征》节目现场。相较于阿拉斯加，位在地球最南端的南极，似乎是一个更遗世独立的地方。冰封了亿万年，1400万平方公里的面积，比欧洲还要大，是388个台湾。但是冬天最低温会到达零下93度，除了驻点的科学家，没有人类可以永久居住。我们从北半球飞越南半球，历时30个小时，终于踏上这片白色大陆。但是没水、没电，也没有建筑物的南极，人类又该如何生存？雪地吉普车停在这一个个土黄色的帐篷前，这里就是我们在南极的避风港。一个个像蒙古包似的坐落在浩瀚的白色沙漠中，和古代探险队当时驻扎基地用的帐篷几乎一模一样。
These tents, as I said, we wanted to have it like the old explorers, you know? They skied to the South Pole, they're great heroes of mine, so I really wanted to have the place have that feel.
但南极气候酷寒，还有时时出现7、8级的强风，古代探险家的豪情能抵挡得住吗？
This camp is, we've actually taken, you've got problems with the wind and you've got problems with the sun because there's no ozone here, so the sun breaks down all the fabrics. So this is why we have natural fabric, we have canvas, and then we have stuck it with this very modern fabric which is very strong. So it means that when the wind comes, the strong fabric protects you, but the sun doesn't break down the tents. Because the modern fabrics, if you leave them for 1 month in the sun, they're destroyed. Because the sun here is so strong. Yeah.
It's a new technology.
Even on the skin, you know, it's like I'm getting older just by standing outside in the sun, yeah.
Alright, you just grab the side, we screw the door all the way around.
Why you turn this around? Why?
Because the wind, the wind comes off the plateau and it comes along in this direction. So then we have to have the door this side. So when you basically, when you're getting in and out, the snow from the ground doesn't come in. Yeah. So everything has to face this way because the wind goes like this. Last summer, we had a wind of about 150 kilometers an hour, and these tents were fine. Yeah, no problem. You couldn't leave the tents because it was too windy and it would blow you over, but the tents are fine.
这个小蒙古包就是我在南极的住所，大家一定很好奇里面到底有什么，我跟着我进去瞧瞧。打开第一道门，还有第二道门，就是要隔绝外面的冷空气进来。然后你可以看到我的房间呢是大约1平半左右的蒙古包，里面很简陋，但是最重要是这一张床，因为一定要暖和，所以它的床单是毛的。然后呢，一定要睡在睡袋里面。这样才不会冷。不过呢，会让整个屋子里面很温暖。一个重要因素就是那个暖炉。这个暖炉是靠瓦斯，然后呢，因为有这个暖炉，然后再加上整个蒙古包的材质，所以让外面呢虽然温度是只有零下20度，可是我的屋子里面呢却有25度。利用热空气上升的原理，睡床也刻意架高，所有小细节都是确保在残酷的极地，人类还是有生存的空间。至于在极地要方便，这个也放有暖炉的小木屋可以解决问题。但在一片荒漠的南极内陆，我们要吃什么？
Is that good? It's our caramelized onion and brie tartlets, and that gets served with a wild rocket salad, balsamic glaze, and roasted pine nuts. And then for the main course, we're doing barbecued lamb cutlets with a spicy couscous and asparagus. And for dessert, it's tiramisu.
Oh my god! Are we in Antarctica?
Indeed you are. Luxury in Antarctica.
主厨 Janet 没有开玩笑，晚餐时间主菜上桌，果然是一大盘香喷喷、让人感动到不行的烤羊排。食材、燃料等待着1周2班的飞机空运进来，再靠着雪上摩托车运送到内陆。至于和外界联系所需要的电力，则是有赖环保的太阳能板。南极日不落的夏日永昼是最好的发电力量。温暖的火炉，丰盛的每一餐，帐篷里、帐篷外，犹如2个世界。
And put the bed inside, and the table inside.
Okay.
And the sleeping bag, and the blankets, everything.
Thank you.
So we still have 1 more hour, and then you can sleep.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick 花了6年时间，30万欧元，相当于台币1200万，向在南极设有科学站的国家申请到驻扎营地的权利。在2个星期内搭好所有帐篷，但是等到夏天结束，2个月后，一切都将烟消云散。
Because this is a temporary camp, and so, you know, we didn't want buildings. We wanted something that we can remove every season, so we leave no trace. And so, you know, we have solar panels and we take all the rubbish out. So I wanted something that we can collapse and we can take away at the end of the season.
从高处看我们的营地，渺小的像半圆球模型，巨大的岩山伫立在对面，仿佛告诫着我们，在这里没有人能带走什么，而不属于这里的东西，什么也不该留下。这是没有法律通行的南极唯一的规则。欢迎回到极地长征，聚焦阿拉斯加。1959年，阿拉斯加成为美国第49州， 也是面积最大的一州。因为拥有了阿拉斯加，美国顺理成章地成为北极成员国，享有北极国家主权，尤其是航运自由。这在地缘政治和全球军事战略上的获益更加不可估量。但是在1867年之前，阿拉斯加其实属于俄国，但是俄国沙皇竟然以每平方公里不到5块美金的低价卖给了美国，这就是历史上有名的阿拉斯加易手。冰雪覆盖的巨大荒原，辽阔的似乎永无止境。半个世纪之前，在任何一个世人的眼里，这都只是一块爱斯基摩人居住的北大荒，人烟罕至，寂寥孤独。直到发现石油。你现在所看到的就是列为美国7大工程之一的阿拉斯加大油管，全长1480公里，从北极圈一路延伸到阿拉斯加中南部的不动港。这是在1975年开始建造，直到1977年才完工，全程耗资了80亿美元，而每年运送的原油超过8000万加仑。1968年，探勘人员在阿拉斯加北部海湾发现了石油。为了要把这些黑金运到千里之外的不动港，新建输油管是唯一的方法。但在严寒的极地，却面临重重挑战。
Pipeline runs 800 miles from Prudhoe Bay all the way down to Valdez. It crosses 3 mountain ranges and 500 rivers and streams. Now, the oil is moving through the pipeline about as fast as we're walking. So the oil is moving about the same speed that we are. So half the pipeline is underground and half of the pipeline is above ground. If the ground is thawed and they can dig deep enough, they'll put it underground. But if the ground is too frozen, they have to bring it up above ground.
光是测量和地质样本测试就花了5年。施工期间还不时找来考古学家研究。
Underneath here, it's very slick. The reason why is because the pipeline, when it gets cold and hot, it moves around. And because of earthquakes, so this slides across all the way from there. It's here, we might come back in 2 months. It might be here, or it might be over there.
石油、天然气、地热、煤、金等各种丰厚的地理资源陆续从白雪荒漠下被发现。人烟稀少的阿拉斯加，100万富翁家庭的比例竟然在全美排名第5。
Well, one of the reasons that the pipeline is very important to Alaska is that it brings a lot of money into the state. So in Alaska, we don't pay a state tax or income tax or property taxes or anything like that. Most of our economy is funded from oil from the pipeline. Not only do we not pay taxes, but once a year, everybody in Alaska gets a check from the state of Alaska because of the oil. So it's very important for our economy.
So how much you get?
I get about $1,500 US a year.
荒漠之地富得流油，但对邻近的俄国人来说，却是心中永远无法抹去的痛。1853年，欧洲爆发克里米亚战争，俄国受到英法联军沉重的打击，国库更被军费洗劫一空，也担心阿拉斯加会就此被英国夺走，于是就想把这不毛之地卖给美国来制衡英国。美俄双方同意以720万美元成交，这是世界土地交易史上面积最大的一笔买卖，每平方公里的单价不到5块美金。1867年，美国星条旗第一次在阿拉斯加领土上升起了。当时沙俄觉得赚到，但是负责交易的美国国务卿西华德却被美国人批评得体无完肤，嘲笑阿拉斯加是西华德的冰箱， 或是西华德的蠢事。当时西华德说，现在把它买下来，也许在多年之后，子孙就会因为这块地而得到好处。果然，30年后，他的预言成真。发现金矿和石油之外，进入人类飞翔的20世纪，阿拉斯加又成为太平洋航空路线的中转站。2战后，更是美国的战略部署地。而山姆大叔用导弹直接对准的，就是这片冰冻土地曾经的主人——苏联、俄国。地理大发现，让世界开始认识阿拉斯加。昔日的荒土，今天的宝库，贡献了1/5的疆土面积，是美国崛起的最大力量。阿拉斯加似乎也正如它的名称原意，伟大的土地。欢迎回到极地长征，聚焦阿拉斯加。2015年9月，美国总统奥巴马到阿拉斯加州，他成为第1位访问极区的美国总统。除了呼吁全球关注气候变迁，似乎也在表明美国正加入新一轮的极地资源争夺战。因为随着冰层融化，拥有丰富资源和战略位置的南北极将一步步成为新的国际热点地区。但是阿拉斯加的原住民代表曾经在一场国际会议上有一段发言，他说：“争取人类的权利固然重要，但是自然界的权利又将如何？野牛或是森林的席位会在哪里？谁又能替我们的下一代发言？”在科学家不断敲响生态警钟的同时，这或许是我们对这片广袤的冰雪极地最应该学习的相处智慧。非常感谢您今天的收看，我是舒梦兰，聚焦全世界，我们下次再会。